Look at all ya. Welcome back. Okay, folks, it's time for our annual AR versus VR debate. Last year, how many of you were here last year for the debate? Okay, put your hands down. How many of you watched it online on YouTube? Nice. So last year, this debate got pretty heated, and so this year we knew we needed to bring in the heavyweights in order to hit home what is really happening with these technologies. This year's panel is made up of folks that have been in AR and VR for upwards of 50 years, so these guys really know their stuff. Representing the VR side is VR pioneer and virtual reality co-creator of VRML and X3D ISO standards for network 3D graphics, and VP of Web and Open Platforms at Wevr, Tony Parisi. Representing the AR side is CEO and founder of Osterhout Design Group, Ralph Osterhout. Ralph founded ODG in 1999 after several decades founding, building, and selling companies in consumer products, sporting goods, defense contracting, personal electronics, and high-tech toys. And in the middle, as our moderator, is the one and only Tom Furness, a pioneer in human interface technology and grandfather of virtual reality. Tom served a combined 23 years as an U.S. Air Force officer and civilian at the Armstrong Laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. He is the founder and international director of the HIT Lab and the founder of the Virtual World Society, and he's credited as a pioneer in developing virtual reality and augmented reality. Please help me in joining Tony Parisi, Ralph Osterhout, and Tom Furness to the stage.
Hello, everyone. Hey, so there's still blood left on the stage here from last year. And we decided that, those neophytes, those beginners, we need to really bring in the heavy. I don't know we want to be called heavyweights, though.
We're heavy enough.
Right. You're heavy enough, that's right. Okay. So we're going to have some fun, but we're going to have to not only have a little fun and a little debate going on here and sort of picking sides, but we also want to make some profound statements, hopefully, and we also want to have this to be thoughtful. And certainly the gentlemen that surround me here are fantastic people, and they have thought about this a lot. And we've sort of, in a way, pushed them into a corner and encouraged them to sort of take a position, sort of help us with a little bit of debate here. But just to get started, what I'd like to do is have these gentlemen, we'll start with the old guy, we'll start with Ralph, I don't know.
So depressing.
And Ralph, you tell us a little about yourself and your life and sort of what's going on in your life right now.
I don't know. Let's see. I'd say one thing, going from Boys and Girls Aid in Southern California to San Francisco and the wine country, it's a good path.
Ah, okay. Anything else about yourself?
I don't think I think just one thing is that someone saved me from myself. I took an LSAT test when I was young. I think I got the lowest score they ever recorded. And they said, what you ought to do is find a shady tree and sit down and just hope life will pass you by. So since then, it's all about starting companies and collecting really fun, talented people and looking forward every day to walking in the front door and spending your time with them.
Fantastic. Okay, Tony, tell us about Tony. Okay.
So I just gotten out of music school and decided to study computer science, and then couldn't get away from the arts. This was in Boston. I'm a New England boy. Couldn't get away from the arts, ended up dating a girl that was going to art school, and at her art school, she helped organize an event that brought Jaron Lanier to the school to show off these giant virtual reality headsets, which I'd been sort of reading and hearing about a little bit. That was pretty impressive, even though, as we know the history of this. It was very low-tech stuff compared to what we have today, and it was very big, bulky, and expensive. But I thought it was pretty cool. Didn't really give it another thought until about 6 months later at a party with my girlfriend, now wife, and some of her friends. And they said, there's this friend from out of town. He's here from San Francisco. He's kind of a geek, and he's doing this virtual reality stuff. So there's a guy named Mark Pesci. we became friends. My wife and I moved out to San Francisco about, I don't know, 6 to 9 months after that. Looked Mark up as one of our people, and he showed me 3D rendering on a personal computer. I mean, these things had processing power measured in, megahertz, and internet was done in those days on a dial-up modem, that thing that squeaks and squawks. Many of you people in the audience might not know what these things are. And he said, I'm going to connect this to the internet, and that was the thing that came to be known as VRML, which I created with Mark. Before anybody was really using the internet, nobody really knew what VR was, and most of the computers couldn't handle it. I've somehow, lived through that. I stayed in 3D visualization and wound up here when VR started booming again. And all his dreams and all that excitement from those years ago are back, but stuff is actually working. I mean, things are cheap enough. People are ready for it. We're in an interactive age where kids grow up kind of, trying to pinch magazines now. Print magazines, they actually try and touch them and pinch them and scroll them. So I think people expect interaction, they expect immersion, and so this is a radically different time. So it's so good to be here and to be able to talk about this stuff.
Great, thank you. So since we've sort of separated you two, you notice there's a large space. Let's sort of start off with some positioning. So, Ralph, let's start with you. Okay, you're taking the side of AR. You think the AR is going to win, that this is the dynamite technology of the future. Sort of give us a little bit of your rationale behind that position.
I just think if you look at the span of a person's life, when you're young, we lust for knowledge and prove to friends and relatives and strangers that we're perhaps more knowledgeable and smarter than them. As we get a bit older, become profoundly interested in our health and our well-being and what we might do left with our life. And ultimately, as you get to my stage, as an example, you hope you racked up enough memories that you can drink as you get older and reflect back on all the things you hopefully accomplished and the friends you made. So I think, to me, when you think about AR, the idea of taking information and superimposing it on the real world to let you better understand objects, information, places, history, all of those things. And then as we move forward in time, imagine that you're wearing your devices that are monitoring your heart rate, your blood pressure, your EKGs, virtually body temperature, everything, and even chemical exhalations in your breath to determine how your blood glucose levels are, but inobtrusively. And it's a health monitoring, and it's a thing that lets you know you're okay. And then ultimately, the memories. And we think of the good and the bad. You have the joy of going into your bedroom and sleeping and being anybody, anywhere, anytime. You can fly, you can jump off cliffs, and you don't die. You can take on the personalities and caricatures of virtually anyone you found interesting or enjoyable in your life. And those things take place in the real world. Even though it's VR in the sense where you're dreaming, you're in your bed or wherever you happen to be sleeping, and you didn't have to forsake your safety or anything or be essentially incredibly harmed by harsh environments. All there happened in the real world. And I think augmenting the reality of waking and sleeping is a profoundly world-changing event that will overtake us.
Let me have a follow-up question here. So in your bedroom, you have your AR capability, and you turn off the lights.
Yep.
Why isn't that VR?
That's a very interesting question. That's why I'm not going to be upset about VR, because you have to have it. The neat part about it is you can open your eyes if you got something too frightening and terrifying. Like, I'm not really fond of spiders. I don't care about people shooting at me or snakes, but spiders are not my friends. And to me, the idea that I've got a spider crawling up my face or biting me again, like it has in the past, it's really nice to be open your eyes and say, Jesus, there's no spider, things are good. So I come out of VR, and which was just wonderful because I could accomplish wonderful things and horrible things, like reliving the Dear John letter I got from my sweetheart in high school over and over again, to open my eyes, and guess what? There's a picture of somebody there that I'm hearing now that looks pretty good, not so bad.
All right. So, Tony, here you go. VR position.
I see the world differently. I think, AR augments the real world, makes it more magical. but I think a large part of the history of development of media and technology is about the intent to escape the real world for a while. I think a lot of the excitement about VR is about going other places. It's about going to the Eiffel Tower. Yeah, that's in the real world, but I'm not there right now. I'm not physically present. I don't want to see a little Eiffel Tower on my tabletop. I want to go there and feel like I'm there. Or I want to be in a completely other place that's not the real world for a while. And I just think there's a huge amount of interest in VR because precisely of that. It takes me somewhere else, makes me feel like I'm somewhere else. So just the thesis and the use case around that is in diametric opposition to augmented reality. And so VR is a very effective medium for doing that. It's a way to tell stories and take people places that I don't think can ever be accomplished in AR. So therefore, I think VR is going to be a much more compelling set of use cases for the next little while, at least. I can't tell you where things are going to land years from now, but in the very near term, I think that's what's going to drive most people's interest about this.
Okay, well, a little follow-up question. We know what basically the business predictions have been for the AR and VR business space. And certainly in the short term, we see that there's a lot of interest in VR, and that will sort of lead the pack to begin with. But in the longer term, the predictions are that AR will be substantially a larger market than VR. How would you react to that?
That's a very logical and reasonable point of view. B, the predictions being made now for anything beyond a 3-year time horizon aren't worth anything. We have no freaking idea what's going to be happening 3 years out. These technologies will be out there. They will be used in so many different ways that we haven't even imagined yet. So, yeah, check with me in 3 years. But I don't give much credence to those predictions personally.
So you don't believe the predictions beyond 3 years?
Yeah, just by the very nature of the art of prediction. Nothing to do with the specifics.
Okay. Now, what about you, Ralph? Do you believe those predictions?
You know, which one you want to pick. I love predictions. I can't think of anything more fun. I love to tell the employees, listen, if we do this and do it right, we won't control the world, but we can take part of North America. Now, that's a prediction, and maybe I shouldn't say that, and it's probably not true. But people love to wind themselves up, and I love to wind them up as well, and thinking there's nothing we can't do if we work hard enough and we're committed enough and loyal enough to one another. So that's a prediction. You can say you're out of your mind, for Christ's sake. Who the hell can do that? But you know what? Goals in life. What are you going to do with today? What are you going to do when you see your sweetheart? What are you going to do with your pals? You're predicting that it can go really well. If you sat there and said, shit, I can't predict anything. I go see my friend, I'll probably have bad breath, fart in a car, and I'll be so sorry I went and saw him. Well, that's a prediction if you want, but maybe just doing it and going and saying, I'm going to be positive, I'm going to predict I'm going to have a good time. It unfolds really nicely rather than speculating on all the subtractions and horrible possibilities that may possibly occur.
Okay, so here you have this AR dream, but what is going to be driving that dream? What is your killer application? Because you get asked this a lot, I'm sure. What is your killer application for AR?
I don't think it's the thing people think about. They think about, oh my God, I could read my email driving the car. I can get my messages anywhere, anytime. I don't really think about those things. I think about things that I see almost every day of my life and people that I meet or know or somehow related, even tangentially, people beginning to have their memories and their associations slip away. If you see a person that goes to church and for example, their husband died or conversely, their wife died and they're beginning to lose their memories. And they go into a church social hoping to get some consolation from being with people that they may know or have had pleasant experiences with. And looking around suddenly, and they're looking at someone and facial recognition and gait and voice recognition reads out in their glasses unobtrusively that no one sees but them, tells you who the association was, how long you've been friends, what they like and don't like, and you haven't seen them since such and such a date. And to be able to look at them and say, hey, Tom, I really missed you, how you been? You know, this idea of refreshing memories and bringing associations together to prevent the how shall I say, the uncomfortable inability to readily and warmly communicate with one another, I put somewhere between extraordinarily important and not. I don't think being able to get at my email is important than to look at people who walked up in the last 2 days that were, God almighty, smart as hell and interesting and fun, and son of a bitch, I'm trying to think, who is that? And I don't think that's charming. I think it's the antithesis of charming. And I think the idea that I could recognize them and mine my memories for the association is something that is transformative and almost unbeatable in terms of human importance.
Well, how would you react to that, Tony?
Oh, well, that is just terrifying because that sounds great, but then I don't know if any people in the room here have read a fantastic novel called Super Sad True Love Story. It's basically the neuromancer of AR in a way, by Gary Steingart, this expat Russian writer in New York. He's also written great books, Absurdistan, Russian Debutante's Handbook. Anyway, he paints a future where you could have that same kind of technology and basically figure out what a person's net worth is, and decide if you want to date them. Or, of course, be advertised to, a la Minority Report and all that. And so, to me, that's just a terrifying future. I don't even want to think about that. Not for the use case that Ralph described, but for the other ones I was just getting into. So, I'm a little fearful that that's where AR could take us. That sneaky, stealthy way to reconstruct memories also becomes, a way to get marketed to and or judge people without really getting to know them, just based on their, basically floating Facebook profile that's sitting out there in your AR glasses. Don't like it.
Okay, so you don't like them. Certainly there's been some adverse reaction to having these glasses, the Google Glass, an example. So what is it that turns you off so much about having this?
Well, it's not the social stigma. I mean, I think, there's enough social stigma around get your face out of your phone already. I think we'll accommodate, if these become popular devices, we'll accommodate to that. And that was a big thing around Google Glass. There was that social stigma of that, and the unidirectional part of it too, that you didn't know if people were observing you, right? Assuming those get smoothed out, it's more of the things I'm concerned about, again, these sort of invasiveness issues, or just, the ability to have information about people that maybe, they hadn't completely thought they were sharing. We already have this problem in social media in spades, right? So again, it's my concerns on that stuff, not the day-to-day social stigma, but more just the potential, nefarious emergent behaviors that happen because we brought these devices into our daily lives.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think, Ralph? What do you think about that answer?
I don't agree, and I think several reasons. First of all, to the problem of this person or that, or too much information, there's an incredibly reliable invention that solves this problem. It's an off-on switch. So the second part of this, I'd say, is that I don't really think Google Glass failed because it was obtrusive and one-sided. I really don't. And I applaud Sergey and Larry for having the guts to get out there and put something in the marketplace. But I think what's happened is the consumer and the professionals in this audience and everywhere are extraordinarily insightful and more clever than people give them credit for. If you develop an elaborate solution to a non-problem, it probably will not win. If you give someone something and I do this and it changes your life, you probably will find a way to forgive it. There's a guy here, very nice guy, came to see us. They didn't know him from Adam, and he said, look, I got a problem. I've got a bunch of my customers, they suffer from macular degeneration. If you don't know it, half the population, 55 or over, have big gray spots in the center of their fovea. They can't see rat shit in a rain barrel. So he said, is there something that can be done? And so we worked with him, a very nice guy and a very clever guy, and we did something with him, and we put lenses on the glasses and did some other things, and lo and behold, he says, I want to send you something. He sends us a video of a woman who's 81 years of age who hasn't watched television, read a newspaper, played the piano in a decade because she can't see. So the software application was loaded on the glasses and a simple change to it that took us, if you're blind, crippled, and crazy, maybe 2 hours to develop. And lo and behold, she sends the thing. As she's watching the news, she is playing the piano for the first time in a decade. And you want me to say, son of a bitch, I'm so angry that I wasted that time that was it was an obtrusive piece of equipment that destroyed her life. I think it transformed it. And when you see a person walk into a place that happened recently, and this was a grandpa that had not been able to see anything, and the family watched him put on a pair of glasses, and for the first time recognized the people. and see things that he was interested in or she was interested in, I would say, you know what? If you make things that are a genuine solution to real problems, and in fact, you probably will make a material contribution to the value in people's lives that may put on something like this.
Okay, thanks. Now, back to killer apps. It's your turn, Tony.
Okay.
Tell us what you think killer apps.
All right, well, killer apps are always funny. I'll tell you the ones I like. And my theory is these could be killer apps because if I like them, there's probably some other people in the world that like them and maybe a lot of people that like them. That's the only way I can approach this, right? I mean, and only time will tell what the killer app is. No one's ever predicted killer apps effectively. It's all, in the rearview mirror. It's all 20/20 hindsight. I'm going to say gaming. It seems obvious. It's a go-to thing in a 3D medium like VR. But I've personally experienced some wonderful games already. Everything from Fantastic Contraption, where you're building these Rube Goldberg machines. It's so addictive. I spent an hour in there trying to overcome the physics of that. Or Space Pirates, where you're shooting. I mean, I have my personal favorites there. These are games I would spend coin on in the Steam store. Gonna happen, absolutely happening. So that's obvious. Get that one out of the way. I believe that some version of the cinematic VR we're seeing, stories like The Blue from my company, Wevr, it's not a story, but experiences that have this backstory and then you explore, are going to be fantastic. I mean, people are buying them already. I was hearing some stats in the previous panel on VR investing. There's a few million been spent in the Steam store for VR already, which is amazing. These things have been out just for a few months, right? And it's on games and it's on experiences like The Blue. So those are two to me. My personal favorite, this is one I've dreamed up for years. This is why I got into this stuff, is I get in a VR rig and I've got the whole internet around me and in front of me and everywhere. And that's the one that I hope to see someday exist. And I hope some people are working on it. And then the final one would be, the other thing that's just amazing is apps like Tiltbrush, where people can create. And beyond creation, it's sharing. And all those dynamics that made Minecraft a success. Now Minecraft's for 8 to 12-year-olds, so they get great joy in sitting there just tapping on bricks all day long. And that's not going to work for a 25-year-old or a 40-year-old. But there are other versions of that where they can create, share experience together. And so, using VR capabilities plus input and room scale to create like that, I think are actually sleepers. I mean, everyone loves Tiltbrush and they say, yeah, but I think that may be like the killer, is be able to create and share in environments like that. But those are the ones that I like. And I figure you cover those areas and you've probably covered almost all kinds of demographic, psychographic interest groups. So, I think those are the ones we're going to see, something in those realms. But again, these are the ones that are just for me. So if there's anybody else in the audience like me, one at a time we'll get to billions and we'll have killer apps, right? Make sense?
So what do you think about this?
Honestly, he is such an important figure in the history of all this. You can't take umbrage with anything he says. For my part, I'm just much more childish, very candidly. And perhaps as you start losing your buttons as you get older, there was a company you all know, they'll be blissfully unmentioned, but they came to see me and said, because I'd done a lot of toys, and this is the killer app in my mind. So they're very, very self-important, and they talked about their favorite characters. And so they said, what do you have that's really interesting? Now, they had bent me over and buttered me up twice in the past for a great deal of loyalties they didn't pay, but that's okay. So they said, what do you have? I said, you shouldn't have it. It's far too big and too important. I just can't do it for you. They said, what is it? I said, okay, you pick your character. They picked one. So I picked up a microphone. I said, let me show you something. And I said, hi, boys and girls, in a monotone. Hi, boys and girls, this is your old pal Donald. You know what I like to do? I like to run around Disneyland buck naked. Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy. Then I pushed a button, and it played back my voice, transformed to Donald, perfect. Absolutely perfect. I let him watch the waveforms, and it was flawless. I'd like to tell you about the other one. It was about a character called Mickey who pulled his pants down and showed him something. But they got the message, and it made me really feel good. It made them laugh. It was instead of, saying, F you, it's just kind of digging them a little and making them pay the royalties and saying, you know what? The ability to not only transform a person's voice. Listen to mine. Right now, anybody who's out here who's really accomplished in medicine, I'll pay you right now $100,000 if you can change my voice. I want to be James Earl Jones, and I mean it. Now, that issue aside, I think the idea that you can look at somebody And I can put a trout head on the face where he becomes a perfectly animated, ugly, stinking trout head on the body of a stepfather was something that I'd have just killed for. I'm probably in state prison right now if I could have done it. To watch you manipulate some horrible human being to your absolute delight, and they have no idea why you're absolutely paralyzed with joy. And changing their voice to me is, I don't think there's any such thing as too much humor and too many ways that you can benignly decompress the tensions around happening in your life by laughing your ass off at the expense of somebody who richly deserves it. But only you know what's going on.
So the killer app, nice. Sorry. So the killer app for AR, you're saying, is comedy.
Oh, okay. I think it's here, but that's all right. There's a couple, and you can meld them together. If you were blind, crippled, and crazy, you could do it in a week or two. And I think it's just transforming a real person here and now so seamlessly and perfectly that you'd get sort of a spiritual Woody, if you would, if you saw it.
Not touching that one.
No,
I said spiritual.
Okay. I think you would be really dangerous as James Earl Jones, actually. Okay, so we've been around a while, right, guys? And we've had experiences in our lives that we can say are sort of defining experiences. That we've talked about it a little bit already, but if you were going to say, and this doesn't even have to relate to AR and VR, but what would you say is your defining experience if you had to pick one? We'll start with you, Tony.
We are talking about VR and AR, or are we talking about life in general?
Well, if you have something that transitions that, if there's something better in AR and VR, you can go there too.
Oh boy, no. Let's just start with VR and then we'll just kick it around, right? So it's going to sound partisan, but the first time I tried the Blue, which was made by this company Wevr that I work at, but in all fairness, I didn't work there when I tried it. So I took a job later, partly because of this. So if you haven't done this experience, and there's now a series of them, by the way, there's 3 of them. This is being face-to-face with a 40-foot whale under 30 or 40 feet of water in the deep sea, maybe 100 feet, on a sunken ship. Being taken somewhere like that and having such a convincing illusion of that where I could actually walk around and interact a bit was what got me over the top and made me realize that VR was going to really be happening. It wasn't just this little quick little blip and trend in the tech. And so I went to Weaver's office and got an early demo of that in like April or May of last year, when basically there were only 3 Vive demos. There was like the big robot, there was Tilt Brush, and there was the Blue. And to me, that just made me realize this is going to transform a lot, whether it's, again, traveling somewhere else or, going to this fantastical landscape or getting an experience that you're not going to get unless you're a diver, right? That's the only people that have experiences like this, scuba, right? To me, that was a watershed. I don't know if it's a life-defining moment, but it was a watershed in recent memory. Right?
What about your watershed?
Oh, I was thinking when I was young, boy, I'm going to get myself a 470, put that baby on my back with good boots and go traipsing across Africa with my best friend and get the big 5 and everything else, and that was the hot ticket. So the counterpoint to that is 3 years ago, I went to Africa with my wife. We went all over Africa, and I was thinking my watershed moment, if you would, is I'm sitting there with, first of all, there are no dreadlocks. You should know that in Africa. They're not existent. Everybody has short hair, and they look lovely, and thank God they have beautifully shaped heads. But I'm talking to some people that are all in mobile, and they said, what are you doing, whatever? And I said, let me show you something. I hand them a pair of glasses, and they're talking to me, and I talk to them. And I could go from Swahili to English, and vice versa, to people that I have no chance of ever talking to. And their reaction was they had seen magic. And my reaction is I'd seen magic. Because the likelihood I'm going to learn Swahili is not really great. And what I found is, my God, here's a simple piece of technology that's completely innocuous, and yet we were able to converse and share our hopes and dreams and aspirations and talk about what knowledge and things might do for us. And I'm thinking, this is about as good as it gets. And I don't have to go to school. I don't have to burn with a little candle desperately trying to learn the various aspects of a complex language like that. And I'm saying, my God, the reality is that technology can break the barriers and let me become friends with someone I may or may never see again. And that person can contact me, and I can have the joy of knowing their feelings and their experiences that they had with me that I had with them. And we have different languages, and it made no difference because now we could talk. To me, I'm going.
Okay, so we are certainly making a lot of progress in both AR and VR, but there's probably still more to be done. What would you say, Tony, really where we need to go from here? What are the challenges that we need to be working on right now?
Got to get rid of the wires.
Amen.
That's it.
That's the big one.
That's a big
Lots of other little ones.
one. Okay. What about you?
I think I love VR. I think mixed reality is really going to be the big tomorrow. And I think the idea that I can be here and now, and I can even look at you and dissolve right out inside.
Oh, God, there's a trout on my head right now.
Oh, yeah, no. Nah. I'm just thinking how incredible it would be to be able to think of someone who was the architect of something that people absolutely are enchanted with, and be able to dissolve right into virtual reality here and now and have the experience and think about all of this, and then be able to pull myself out to AR here and now and say, oh boy, the joy of going from one media to another and back again, wherever I choose and for how long I choose to have that experience, is something to me that is insanely appealing. And if you don't think it is, and maybe to the guys, because I really can't express the view of a woman well here, in all honesty, but I'm out with my wife that I dearly love, and she wants to look at a furl of person. I'm just trying to stab myself in the eye quickly so I can blind myself and get over the experience. And I'm imagining looking at the wall, and suddenly the wall's breaking apart, and there out comes an incredibly articulate monster from one of the fascinating games. And I'm dealing with that right now and quietly blowing them up. And she just sees me patiently smiling at the furl of person like I give a red rat's ass. To me, it's wonderful.
Okay.
You have a rich inner life, my friend.
Now, what kind of face would you put on Tony?
Come on. He looks like, frankly, forget the guy's politics. Jump in the Wayback Machine and pull the lever. Christ, I look at him, he reminds me of Mel Gibson. He does. It could be worse. It could be Pa Kettle, for Christ's sake. Yeah. But you look like Mel Gibson. I loved Mel Gibson. I want to beat the shit out of him, change his views about humanity a little bit, but I sure liked him.
Wow.
Lucky you. I'll trade anytime you want.
Mel, huh?
Thank you, Sugar Tits.
I'm reminded of Johnny Carson when he, on the Tonight Show, when there were some, well, I'm probably on it, shouldn't go there, but.
Why not?
But it's being recorded.
Oh.
My grandchildren are going to watch this. Nevertheless, no, I won't go there. So.
Are we talking Karnak? I mean, how bad is this going to go?
Okay, so what I heard you say, though, Ralph, was interesting. Now, you're talking about sweeping between VR and AR.
You can't stop it. It's going to be a tidal wave.
Stop it. So, okay, well, why are we having this debate then?
Well, I like them already. I liked them before we started this conversation, but it's going to happen. And anybody who thinks mixed reality is not going to transform your life, you know what I suggest? Go to a Zerpo store and buy little Cessna inner tubes, ones with little green and red patches that you used to have when you'd go to the seashore with your parents. Put one over each arm and sit there and wait patiently, because there will be a tidal wave that'll make the ones like in Indonesia look like a little ripple. And it will sweep our lives, because mixed reality will transform us. And if you want to be really considerate and how more benign and thoughtful, there are people who suffer from afflictions, from autism to schizophrenia. And I spent a number of years volunteering in the state hospital. And if you could give those people some relief from the tragedy of their afflictions by going through one media to another for a while and back out again, the message is what you seem to feel tortured with is all part of the spectrum of human experiences. And so how much could it change us? Imagine. It's not just about entertainment and gaming and the hubris of self-indulgence, but the ability to say, what can't I be? What can't I be? What kind of life might I have?
Wow. Okay, well, that's pretty cool. Yeah. So what is your reaction to this?
I don't know what we're talking about anymore, so let's rewind.
We're into heart and soul now, I think. Yeah.
Well, I mean, AR or VR, I think a lot of what makes people excited about this is that it's technology for transforming how we view the world or how we interact with the world, how we learn about the world, and how we communicate with each other, whether it's telling stories or getting information, whatever that word means. And so to that extent, they're kindred technologies, right? I mean, they share a lot of technological underpinnings, 3D graphics, motion tracking, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe these things all converge toward an end that's greater understanding and greater communication. Certainly, I think most of the people in this room are hopeful that that's where we're going with this. And I mean, I loved Ralph's story about the translation tool in AR for Swahili. I mean, maybe that's a killer app. That one sounds like a killer app, more than Trout's. So, yeah, I mean, I think where we're going with this is, helping each other make this world a better place, and these technologies are going to do that. But I mean, again, to me, a lot of that's about we can make this world a better place if we can escape into fantasy once in a while. Even if that is just to get, greater empathy, as Chris Milk might talk about, or to just get some greater understanding that we then, after that little journey, that little psychedelic trip we go on, we come back and we maybe are slightly better, a changed person going back out into this real world.
Wait a minute. Has anybody ever seen the 300, all about Spartans? Anybody? Okay, I did. You remember the guys, he was rippled. God, he looked fabulous. I'm sitting here thinking I looked like 55 gallons of butterscotch pudding poured into pantyhose, and I want to look like that guy, even if it's for an hour. Just let me get into my VR, look down and say, son of a bitch, I'm looking good. Instead of sweating and rolling with butterscotch oozing out of my hips. Mixed media, come on guys, get with it.
Okay, so what I really hear and is that really there is a connection, that we're talking about a potential continuum. And certainly when you turn off the lights, AR sort of can become like VR. But there is this area in between that in mixed reality, we call augmented virtuality, which is sort of this thing that we haven't defined too well, where we...
Yeah, I don't know what that is. What are we talking about when we say that?
Okay.
I mean, I hear those words all the time, and I still don't know what that is.
You know the history of this and give it to us.
Well, I mean, so supposedly augmented virtuality is where you now take real world things and put it into the virtual world. So that is supposedly what goes in between. But when we think about things like the magic book technology, where you now have reality, and then you open the book, and you are reading the text, you're looking at the pictures and things like that. But then you put on your magic glasses, and then you actually see the castle pop out of the book. That's augmenting the book, right?
Yep, no question.
Right. But then when you're able to say, okay, there's Cinderella's castle, well, there's some people inside of that, I want to go. And you flip the switch, and now you're in the castle. That's then virtuality.
Yeah.
So sweeping between these different extremes, if we want to call it, really is part of the whole story and really brings it all together to this experience. And I think that's what we're concluding right now. But we have to wrap up, and I wanted to give you guys a chance to have one final say that's going to be recorded for posterity. People around the world are going to be able to hear what you say and what kind of message you want to leave. So, Ralph, why don't you tell us your concluding message?
Thoreau said he said, most men lead lives of quiet desperation. A lot of us are not too tickled with the way things have gone in our lives. I think the thing, if I could say to you here, right now, all right, here's the deal. I got something here for $5,000, selling it right outside the front door on a card table. And you have this little thing, and you swallow it, and you now have a holodeck. You can be any place in the world, anytime you want, and do anything you want. Show of hands, who doesn't want a holodeck? That's what I thought. So the bottom line is this. We want to be able to escape and enhance our lives and our imaginations with endless possibilities. So our VR that we talk about in AR, here I am AR, and I want to go into his world with him and have experiences in the holodeck that allows anything to be possible. And I think it would be shameful for us to say that there's not joy in letting our imaginations and possibilities run wild, because that's really the magic of life.
Tony, your last shot.
Yes, nice. This is in no way to dissuade anybody working feverishly in AR right now. So please take this in the spirit in which it's intended. The world, in terms of giant numbers, is not ready for AR yet, and the magic that Ralph is describing, but we will be. We're going to get there, and VR is the way we're going to get there. So from a point of view of what would win this debate, I think it's safe to say in the next 3-ish years, it's VR, because it can deliver on all these things we're talking about right now, doesn't have some of the sort of technical and design problems right now that AR is facing. But that continuum you painted is very interesting, and I think we are going to get there. But you know, the thing that's going to deliver on that now and get people getting to AR is VR. And I'm not talking technologically as much as expectations and socially and integrating it into our lives. Because the magical reality that Ralph described is some years out. But this is the way we get there. So VR happening right now.
Okay, that's your story you're going to stick to?
Sticking to it.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. This has been a wonderful experience. I have learned a lot, especially about your backgrounds and your passions. And thank all of you who are willing to sit in on this. Certainly, this is a hypothetical kind of debate, because pretty much these guys love each other anyway, and we all live at
Mel. That's Mel.
So thanks for attending, and we'll wrap this up, and let's have a good future together in mixed reality and all this continuum. Okay?
Many thanks.
Give it up!